awesome.
No, glory be to God. That's all I got to say first and foremost. When I grew up in the Baptist church, raised by my grandparents, very conservative, very, we dressed basically immaculate to the T. Graduated from college, went to law school, graduated from law school, and during the time I was in law school, I got married, had 2 kids, and still pushed through, and that was by the grace of God. But right when I graduated law school, I went through a divorce. I was living in my car and in hotels. During that time, I was determined to push through, and every single day while they were at school, I would go to their school and volunteer. And it was, I'm a very private person, so during that time, no one even knew that I was living out of my car in hotels. And to this day, like, some family members might not even know. And I was praying for a new church home. I was at a gas station, and I saw this gentleman. He was coming to my car, and he was selling something. And I was polite, like, no, thank you, I don't need anything. The middle part of your car. So I had my Bible there because I tell you, during that time, I was in my word. God was just feeding me and loving on me and depositing. I've always had a relationship with God, but it wasn't until that time that it got deeper. It got real. It got like, God's like, no, I'm not about the laws and, structure and, that's one part. But no, he's like, I'm about love. I'm about grace. I need you to realize how much I love you. And the guy, he was like, oh, okay, you don't want to buy it? But he saw my Bible. He lit up. He was like, I can't even remember what he said. He just got lit up. He's like, oh, you're a believer. Something I was like, yeah. And he was like, you know what? He pulled out this card. It was for the church. The first thing I saw was the jean shirt. And I have that card to this day. And the way that he hyped up the church, initially, I looked at the card, and then I saw where the address was, and it was right around the area where my children's father lived with my children. I'm like, well, why don't I know about this church? If it's this good, why don't I know about it? And God kind of reminded me, like, you've been looking for a church. Just based on the way I was raised, very independent, very like, okay, God, I'm always trying to help God. But he brought me down to say, no, you need to realize that I've always been helping you, but I had to bring you down this low to realize that I have been helping you like you don't even realize it. It took about 2 weeks. I'm like, you know what? I'm gonna just try it out. Because I actually went to a church in the area and it just wasn't the right fit. Came to the service. I remember exactly what I had on. I had on a pink and black summer dress. I had on my pink summer hat, just determined, like, I may be at my lowest, but I'm gonna push through, and God's just loving on me, so I'm gonna show it. So I walked through the church. There was like this little walkway, and you can hear the music. I'm like, whoa, like, what is that? So I come around the church. Immediately I was greeted. I remember her, and I was just like, her eyes were just lit up, and she was like, welcome. And I'm just like, what in the world am I walking into? I'm not used to this. I saw the wall filled with the pastors and their wives and the pictures. I'm like, whoa, this church is different. Each and every time since then that I've been here, and it's going on 8 years, that it always dealt with whatever I was going through in that particular season. It was so amazing. 9 o'clock, I stayed for the 11 o'clock. Literally 2 services by myself. I knew in my spirit that this was it. So when I heard you say, and you always say it, and I tell you, it's so powerful, give it a year. It's like, wow. But I had already determined that this was a chance. Like, okay, I'm gonna give it a year, just see what happens. The next Sunday, me and my kids were there. We were literally just every Sunday there. It came a point to where I was like, okay, Lord, I want to get back serving. Requirements were kind of on point, and I love that about this church. I mean, it's welcoming, it's relaxed, it's come one, come all, but there's structure here, there's order here, there's a reverence for God. And there was the application, and it was like, oh, you got to be going here for 6 months. You got to have your house in order. I'm like, I don't even have a house yet. But during the time, I got a house, I got a job, and that was a miracle all on its own. It was like 5 months. The pastor at the time, who was over the children's ministry, he was like, hey, would you want to serve? And I was like, oh, yes, of course. And I'm like, God, this is you. Doing children's ministry for years. And I remember the day, 11/16/2014. It was my birthday. I remember it because it was my birthday. My mom I invited my mom to service, and my children raised their hand and they gave their lives to Christ. That's what it's about. And I can remember when a guy handed me the card for the church. He was like, it's a real church for real people. And I had no idea what that meant there, but it just sounded awesome. I'm like, okay, yeah, I'll try it. That's the legacy we're leaving, because it's not about us. It's about them. It's about the world that we're living in, and be like, I don't care what's going on. You keep your eyes on the Lord. We keep our eyes on the Lord. We're not going to fear man. We're not going to fear what's going on. We're going to focus on God and say, you know what? God, it's for you. It's all for you. He inspired me to write my first movie script during that time, you know, living in my car and in hotels. And I'm sitting there at the library applying for jobs and writing a script. I mean, that's God. And then he blessed me during that time to be at a church that I've been planted in for 8 years. God has just done so much, so much. I can tell you, and I don't even want to cry. Oh, Jesus. Or in 2020, my mom passed. My mom passed away, and it was tragic. During that time, because of the relationships that I built, and when you're going through something that's tragic and the family's dealing with it, it's almost like you guys are there together, you know. But the calls that I've gotten with prayer, literally like prayer warriors on the phone with me, praying with me, you know, calling me, texting me, checking in on me. That's, I can tell you, it was sisters in the church, it was brothers in the church, and I will forever remember that. Like during the time where, you know, I experienced probably one of the most devastating things in my life. I had a support system here, like for real. Didn't come to church for maybe like a month, and I felt it. I was like, I gotta get back, but I was still, you know, hurting, and I didn't know how. Certain people would say, hey, you gotta get back. You gotta get back. And I'm like, you know what, you're right. You're right. And I did, and I was just like, oh, God is so good. And God just opened so many doors. Even to this day, it's like I'm still growing. And it's like I could tell the story from when I came 8 years ago, but I'm like, there's still stories to tell. There's been times where I've come through the doors and there's been like something going on in life, and I would come to the altar. But honest to God, most of the times when I come to this altar and I'm dropping down on my knees, it's because I am just so thankful to God. Like, I love you so much. I just want more of you. I want to surrender more to you. I want to just give you what you are worth. Every church should be like, you know what? Come, because whether you're broken and you need to fall to your knees, or whether you're thanking God, because I'm thanking you, God, just because you're God.
Did you say both your children raised their hand and got saved?
Yes, at that same day.
Yeah.
And they weren't even sitting next to each other, which was, I'm sitting there in the back, and the pastor is up front, and I'm just watching, and I'm like, wow, like, are you serious? And God did it for me on my birthday. So he's like, you're never going to forget this. I'm not going to say what God's going to do in them, but God's doing something powerful in them. I've seen, and my children, they're a boy and a girl, and they have two totally different personalities. But with my son, I don't want to say a stubbornness, but a obstinate of like, which it could be led in a not so good way, but just an obstinance for like what's right. But with my daughter, it's just compassion. You know, it's just compassion and a gentleness and a sweetness and even they're serving. Young is serving in children's, and I'm looking at them like, wow. Even my son, in youth, he had, like, they called it 5 minutes of fire, and he told his little sermon, and it was on the Joseph story and the dreams, and I'm just like, all right, God. It's what a parent whose heart is after God would want. You know, it's like my heart's after God. It's because I realized it's just not about me. It's like, okay, I'm thinking about what my son is going to be teaching his sons and his daughters or his grandchildren. Like, once I'm gone, I'm trusting that God, because God, it says raise up the child in the way that they should go and they'll follow. It's like, okay, God, I just want to do what I need to do and trust you along the way, and then let them, you know, serve you all the days of their life. He is doing a spark of a fire, of a revival that we talk about it, we say we want it, and I feel like it's coming. I say we got to focus on God, focus on praising Him, focus on worshiping Him. You know, we have an amazing experience when we come here. But how are we bringing people here? How, once we get out, and I need to get some more cards because I don't have any. There was a time where I was passing out cards. You know, how are we bringing people in? Because, people are groaning. People are needing what we know that we have. And it's like, how are we getting to those people who don't have him? We need to draw them in. Like, we're here, we're praising, we're worshiping, we're knowing that, you know, we're equipped. But how are we drawing in those lost souls who are like hopeless and searching and going to places that are not fulfilling? That when they wake up the next day, it's not fulfilling. You know, it's like we can get up, we can pray to God, we can worship here, we leave out these doors, we're fulfilled.